He said, hold on just a minute.
Wow.
Ready. We'll call the special call Smyth County School Board meeting to order. Roll call.
Jesse Choate.
Here.
Kyle Rose.
Here.
Susan Williams. Here. Todd Williams.
Here.
Paul Grinstead.
Here.
Roger Fry.
Here.
Matt McKinney.
Alright. Make sure we do this, everything's all right here. The Smyth County School Board meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with the continuity of the government ordinance passed by the Smyth County Board of Supervisors on April the 15th, 2020. I wasn't talking in there long. All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, consent agenda.
No changes to the consent agenda as presented.
Make a motion to approve.
Second. Got a motion and second, all in favor? Show of hands. Thank you. Update on fall SOL school.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask Mr. Sturgill to come up. We have completed SOL testing in our high schools and one of our middle schools for the fall of 2020. Mr. Sturgill will share some comparison data with you that you do have a copy of. So, Mr. Sturgill, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. I apologize if I sound a little muffled, but when we talk in the mask, it's kind of what the impression we give ourselves. But anyway, if you will look, I ran a comparison at the same time last year as to where we were this past, and we tested in December and in January at our 3 high schools and 1 middle school. And on the very right-hand side, you can see a difference in the pass rates as compared to passing rate percentages as compared to last year. And at the very bottom down there, you can see a cumulative average. So it was about a 19% drop over what we had at the same time last year, as opposed to what we were able to accomplish this year. We did have, I totaled up, we had 401 students to test this fall. Last year at the same time, we had 637. The reason for that being, of course, some parents opted their students out, for concerns over COVID. Some students were absent, and then also we've had just a little bit of enrollment drop on top of that. So we've got those are 3 big reasons that we had less students to test. Overall, I felt like we did a very good job given the circumstances and what we've done in teaching and getting the kids ready for those SOL tests. At the high school, the state is still requiring verified credits in order to graduate, which means the student has to pass the SOL test in the designated area to get those credits along with the Carnegie credits in order to get a standard advanced studies diploma. At the bottom down there, you can see we also did a comparison on the special needs students and their testing. This year we tested 44 students. Last year we tested 45. So I think a lot of that is due to we've had a lot of those kids in the building a lot, and some of them 4 days a week. So we were able to get a lot of those kids tested. And there wasn't not a big significant difference in their test scores as opposed to what we had last year. And when you look down through there, for example, at the math pass rate on the top of all students for high schools, they were all fairly close to each other for math pass rates. The science pass rates were also very similar at the 3 high schools. Social studies, you notice we don't have many testers. Most of our students get their verified credit in social studies in the middle school for world geography. So we typically don't have that many testers at the high school under the new rules of testing, which means the student does not take an SOL test unless they need to graduate. So we typically don't have any students moving up to the middle school that need history test, which would be World History 1 or 2, or U.S. and Virginia history. English scores were similar, similar to schools. One school had a new teacher teaching that, and getting acclimated to the SOLs there. So that's sort of a comparison, as you can see, by subject area, also pass rate differences, and and one thing that was really nice, the state gave us the emergency local verified credit for students if they took it the first time and they passed the class. We were able to do an emergency local verified credit paperwork and get that student the verified credit without having to retest like we usually do in previous years. Does anybody have any questions about the SOL scores?
On all schools, throwing it together, we do have a percentage on the scores are down, like percentage from the last score that was scoreable. I don't know if these numbers are, I'm sure they're accurate. I'm just saying these are not,
Yeah,
these are COVID scores, you know.
if you look to the end column, Mr. Buchanan, that shows you the difference, the very end. That's a comparison to this fall compared to last fall. And you'll see that.
18.89.
Yeah. Yes,
So they're all down.
we had,
Except for one area. I think it was, history, one school, about 2%. And then there's not a lot of students that tested there, but anyway.
Well, I had one teacher that sent me an email specifically pointed me out and saying I felt like that these scores were going to be down, and I'd like to see that. I won't mention her name. I'd like to see if she gets a copy of this. That my prediction did come true.
This is data that comes straight from Pearson. Okay?
thank you, Mr.
I
Stern.
have a quick question.
Sure.
So I'm sure you've been in touch with other districts. Is this consistent across
Well,
other areas that you've talked with?
let me tell you, the other districts, our neighbors, are just now getting ready to start testing. They have waited. We wanted to get ours in before while the kids are still in the class so they could review. Like, but our neighbors, I think, have decided they're going to start testing like this week. I thought one school system, they're going to wait to start the first week of February. So, I think it's in our best interest to test the kids in those classes while they're in those classes, not be changed to new classes, to go back and test on that. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
So as far as I know, we are the first school system in our general vicinity who has SOL tested at this point. So we don't have that information from the other neighboring systems.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Update on end of term grade.
Yes, sir, and I was gonna talk about this just a little bit, but I thought that I would bring up this graphic on the screen that I'm having difficulty getting to, no, and it's not going to, so let me. One second. So this is a comparison of first semester grades for last year versus this year. So 2021 versus 1920. So our current year is first there, and you'll see the grade level. And what we did was we took it's different than what Dr. Grinstead asked for, and we'll work on that, Dr. Grinstead, in the next day or so. But this gives you the total number of A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. And we put them together, and then we sorted them by grade. It gives you the total number of A's, and keep in mind this is elementary, middle, and high. And it gives you the total number of A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. And this year we had, at the end of first semester, which just recently concluded, we had 47% A's. Of all grades were A's. 20% were B, 12% were C, 8% were D, and right at 11% were F's. And compare that to last year at the end of the first semester, and 52% were A's, 28% were B's, right at 12% C's, 4.59 D, and 2.4 0.44F. But again, we had 10.84% of our total grades, not students, but total grades, were F, compared to the others, but we had resounding 47.86% that were A's as well. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
You said that's K through 12, is that correct?
When we start tabulating, letter grades, first grade.
Okay.
So last year, Dr. Carter, this year, in the F total, we had 4 times as many failures as we did last year, is that correct?
369, yes, sir, close to 4%.
Then I'll rest my case again.
May I answer any other questions? All right, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll move on, public comment. What you do with public comment?
The public comment, again, we had emails submitted today from 8 o'clock this morning until 3 this afternoon, and that was part of the delay in starting our meeting tonight was to allow the board ample time to read through all of the emails that were submitted today. So again, those are before you for public comment.
All right, questions and comments from the board members?
I have a comment on one of the emails that came from a teacher. It says Virginia, I don't know where they got this information. It says Virginia is the only state reporting significant increases in COVID cases. Is that an accurate statement? Where did that come from? I thought California and some of those other states were swaying, and that's New York.
Yeah, the data that we're tracking, Mr. Buchanan, is related to this, to the Mount Rogers Health District in Smyth County as a whole.
I don't know if it's on there before. Oh, they said, talking about the, someone suggested we don't go back to school until everybody has their second dose, which would be February the 11th, I think that's never on. And this is for zero, is that correct? Yeah.
Moderna, I'm sorry.
Today, the CDC said that that particular vaccine versus the Pfizer drug would be probably most effective against these mutants that have come out of South Africa and the United Kingdom. So we evidently we're getting the best of the two. But they suggested that we wait till everybody gets their second vaccine before we do anything. And then you gotta wait till see if that's gonna, how many days you have to wait to see if that's gonna be effective. So then you get into, wait into February again. So I don't know, it's just, it's a trying decision. Our emails the time before last were, we send them back to school, we're all gonna die, all the kids are gonna die. In the last meeting, everybody wanted a raise, and now this meeting, we're all gonna die again. So, you know, what are we supposed to do? I interviewed a lot of elementary teachers since this last meeting, and they're telling me, like we've heard before, those kids in lower grades are getting shortchanged. Some of the emails say not, but they're saying they're teachers in those grades, and they're saying yes, they are. So, and they're saying we need to get them back in the classroom, and I agree with that, have all along. But you know, we got to go by the numbers, and if you believe those, then we'll never go back to school. So, I guess tonight we'll have to make a decision again on what we're going to do. Whether we're going to remain virtual, are we going to go hybrid again, or are we going to, and we talked about some options to get back in school over a period of time. So, I think we got to move forward with this thing. We can't keep these kids home too much longer. They're saying this may go on into that fall. You know, so these kids, this group of kids right now that are seniors, have not been in a classroom over just a few days since last fall. They're going to be going to college. And so they got no preparations to go to college that they should have. You know, hands-on labs and those type things. They're not going to be ready for college. They've been shortchanged for over a year. need to step up to the plate and do something. Whether it's right or wrong, we're not gonna please everybody, you know, everyone, this whole stack of emails, every other one was different. We need to do this, you need to do that. Well, you know, it is a hard decision. Everybody say, well, I can't put myself in your place because you're having to make all these hard decisions. Yes, we are. Somebody's gonna make them. If we left it up to the faculty and the parents and grandparents, we'd get nothing done. We listen to everybody. So we're just gonna have to vote of conscience and do what we think's right by the kids, our faculty, the parents, grandparents, taxpayers, and whoever's involved. Make a decision, and let's get it done, and get these kids back to school. I just, all the teachers I interviewed said, yes, we want to go back. And others, you know, we got a whole list of teachers that said, no, we don't want to go back after the second vaccine. Well, I don't know, that's still work on. You know, we can't let all the teachers and so forth run the school system. That's what we're elected to do. We try to protect them and our kids as best as we can, but, you know, we can't please everybody, and that's never gonna happen. So we're just gonna have to make a decision about what we're gonna do with Smyth County schools. I noticed that Bristol City, Washington County, went back to, went away to the virtual today. So things are opening up, looks like. We've seen the light at the end of the tunnel, and I think we've been up and down way too long. We need to do something. That's all I gotta say.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll make a few comments. And my comments are not anything related to whether we do that or not. My comments revolve around the staff and the work they've done, and I've said this before. So a few moments ago, we talked about the SOL test scores, and we talked about the first semester of grades. And they're down, and everyone knew they would be down going into this. I think everyone expected that there would be some fall off from what would be considered a normal year. So having said that, I would like to just say that I recognize, and I hope the entire board recognizes, the work that went into pulling these kids along through the first semester. I've talked to enough teachers and staff and administrators and assistant administrators and on every level in every school to know that an incredible amount of effort went into getting us to this point. So I would just like to publicly thank everyone that's listening for that effort, and please know that it does not go unrecognized. Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, thank you for your comment. We'll move on to action now.
Sure. Consider participation in the regional virtual program for 21-22. And again, we're at the point towards the crossroads where if we want to continue with this and actually participate in the regional program, I think the sentiment of the board at the last meeting was to move forward with this, knowing that we can throttle back to set the parameters for participation with the number of students and the criteria for admission and things of that nature. So at this point, we do present the MOU for you, and the MOU is attached. It just shares the participation in the virtual regional program. And Dr. Williams presented all the information regarding the virtual program with you at the last meeting. But at this point, it would be presented to you to consider moving forward with the virtual program.
I thought I would do this with schools. Participate in it.
Second.
A motion is second. All in favor, show of hands, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also would like to ask that the board consider appointing someone to serve on this regional program board. That very well could be a short-lived position. If it is a regional program that originates and we govern as a region, then we would have an operating board. If it is out with Virginia Virtual, then there would not be the need for a board at that point. But at this time, we as Smyth County Schools need to consider appointing someone from this board to serve on the virtual board too. And I know that Dr. Grinstead had mentioned to me previously his interest, but again, that's pleasure of the board.
I would move, considering Dr. Vincent's acceptance, that he be approved as the representative of Smyth County on the regional board.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? Thank you.
Now, the next one, consider Smyth County Schools plan to return to in-person learning. Now, I do want to hand out a couple of things to you. And I will cover these in just a minute. Then I'll have these on screen. And then I'll leave you a copy. I'm sure you need to. Yes, sir. I would like to go ahead and begin, if it's okay, to share, we've weighed through options to consider, and I do want to preface this presentation by stating we will operate to the pleasure of the board. If neither of these is the direction you all would like to go, we will certainly adjust to the direction that you see fit. But currently, Smyth County Schools, I do want to share a few things with you. We transitioned to virtual instruction due to the lack of contact tracing. Our nurses are now able to do contact tracing with our staff. All of our nurses have been working with contact tracing. Susan Hoagland, as a nursing director, has performed phenomenally, as well as our other nurses in conducting the contact tracing. We have also proven that we can implement appropriate mitigation strategies, as we did when we were back hybrid. And I would also like to state that when we were hybrid, we had 0 community spread within our buildings except for one location and one instance, and we had 2 employees that were not following proper guidelines, and we did have an issue there, and that was addressed. But aside from that, we did not have any evidence of community spread within our buildings. And what that means is we didn't have it transfer from one person to the other with COVID-19. And with this too, with the plan that's before you, it does have a staggered start, and that is intentional, and I'll go over both of these considerations. The prevailing thought there is transportation could be a concern for us, because if we continue to maintain social distancing and working to get our youngsters back, we want to ensure that we can do that in transportation too. So our transportation, and also with the logistics within each building, that helps us as well. So I do want to present to you 2 different options. And again, we've taken into account the Moderna vaccine and the effectiveness of the vaccine, and there are reports out that state that the vaccine is anywhere from 50% to 80% effective after the first dose after 14 days. And then obviously the results after the second dose of 14 days after the second dose. So let me pull up these so Linda can see these as well. This is option 1, and again, the transition that we're looking at would be a February 1 hybrid instruction through February the 12th, then transitioning February 15th to February 19th, and these are in week patterns. So number 2 and number 3 are in a week-long pattern, Monday through Friday week, which is what I'm identifying. February 15th through February the 19th, and For the week of February 15th to February the 19th, we would bring our pre-K through 3 population back 4 days per week. And hybrid instruction would continue for grades 4 through 12. The next week would be 5 through 8. That would be the week of the 22nd through the 26th. And high school maintained hybrid. And then March the 1st would be pre-K through 12, 4 days a week. So again, beginning with February 1 through February 12, hybrid instruction. And then transitioning to 4 days a week. Option 2 is the February 1 through February 19th, hybrid instruction, pre-K through 12. And then looking at Monday, February the 22nd, for the beginning transition with our pre-K through 3 youngsters. That's the 22nd through the 26th. The rest of the division would maintain hybrid. Then March the 1st would be pre-K through 8. That'd be pre-K, all the elementary and then middle school. March the 1st through the 15th, and high school maintain hybrid. Then March the 8th, everyone would be hybrid. That would bring the high school on beginning on March the 8th. Now again, with the hybrid schedule, keep in mind that's A-Day-B day like we've done before. And I do think that there's merit to option 2 in the fact that the 22nd, bringing back 4 students per day, does give the optimal benefit of the most amount of time of these 2 options for the second vaccine for staff. And there were some comments in public comment about students being vaccinated, and there's just no information yet regarding student vaccines at this point. So again, tracking data, looking at data as of today, our incident rate per 100,000 has been dropping for 18 days. We're at 38 per 100,000. Our percent positivity is 12.9. It's been dropping for 42 days. We have, when we were back in hybrid, we did not have any issue of community spread, and we've negated the issue of contact tracing within our buildings, being able to utilize our nursing staff. So of these 2 options, and I feel like I'm going to be asked the question, so I'm going to go ahead and give my answer. Of these 2 options, I like option 2 the best. I think that it does give our staff more time with the second vaccine coming back on the 22nd, if that's the direction we would like to go. But keep in mind that we can adjust and flex this to the pleasure of the board. And I'll be glad to entertain any questions that you may have.
Yeah, aside from, we went over this, I guess, when you first division, these options, and talking to some teachers, mainly elementary teachers, and they're aware of some of our options, what we proposed. Their point was, if we're going to send pre-K through 3 back to school 4 days a week, why not send 4 and 5 too?
I'll be glad to answer that. Sure, I'll be glad to answer, Mr. Buchanan. 1, transportation, we've got to ensure that we have capacity on our buses. 2, logistics within a school building. And I'm going to tell you, in some of our larger buildings, bringing pre-K through 5 back initially all at the same time will create issues in our larger schools and navigating and making sure kids go where they need to go. Easing back into this, again, has been the direction of the Department of Education and VDH from the very onset. So there's a lot of rationale for the staging in like this. I understand the question, but again, there's a logistical side to making all of this work when you're following true, proper mitigation strategies as you can.
I noticed the governor today, when he made his little speech at the Capitol Conference for all the school board stuff, he said it's up to the regions and school boards to make decisions.
Unfortunately, you all have been put in a position for public health decisions and the return to school, and have been since the beginning of this year. It's been
Basically, all this has done is just move everything down 1 week.
It has, and it does give additional time for the second vaccine
To work,
Yes.
And that's on the 11th, correct? The
The
second dose is
second
given on the
vaccine
11th.
is on the 11th. And I would like to go ahead and share some information regarding the vaccine. I do plan on closing schools on February the 11th for the vaccine. I also plan on closing schools on February the 12th because we're seeing that there are reactions in the first 24 hours of the vaccine. So I do plan on closing schools on that Thursday and that Friday in anticipation of potential issues with the vaccine. But I'll put that out to staff, tomorrow.
So on the 12th, no virtual.
No virtual.
Closed
Correct.
completely for.
11th and 12th, yes, sir.
Dennis, if you say that, I'm not picking on you, I'm just asking a question. Okay, February the 22nd on your, option two, February 22nd to February 26th, we're gonna send the pre-K through 3 back to school 4 days a week.
Yes, sir.
Then on March 1 through March 5, we're gonna send, the rest of them to school. So if it's a logistical problem, to do it all on the 22nd, why is it a logistical problem when we bring them all back first?
No, the first actually has elementary and middle, high school is still out. Yeah, and again, that goes back to transportation.
Make sure you got the right, correct sheet.
Does it say option 2 at the top?
I think he's looking at the wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
So
No, he's
you're
right. He's right. Yeah. So look at that again. Let me do another explanation here. Let me try this again.
4 and 5 are split up to 2 days, where pre-K 3 is 4 days, every day.
Right.
That makes sense, so it's split.
So week 1, it would be pre-K through 3. No, and again, once we get to February 22nd or whatever date you all decide, pre-K through 3 would be 4 days a week. Grades 4 through 12 would be hybrid. The next week, pre-K through 5 and middle school would be 4 days a week, and high school hybrid. The next week, everyone 4 days a week.
March 8th, everybody.
Correct, yes, sir.
Dr. Carter,
Yes, sir.
all the while, regardless if it were in option 1 with a full in-person learning across the board on March the 1st, or option 2 for March the 8th. Parents will still all be 8 until the end of this school term have the option to be virtual.
Yes, sir, that is accurate. So, and I'll restate that. So parents will continue to have the option to keep their child virtual for the remainder of this academic year or to transition back to school when the decision is made by the board to begin in-person instruction. Yes, sir.
And, Dr. Carter,
Yes, sir.
have we requested from the parents what percentage we like to remain?
We have not, Dr. Grinstead, and our plan was to utilize this week or the week prior to the begin and transition to gather that data. And again, we felt that it would not, we didn't want to give false hope to return if that was not the pleasure of the board. So again, that's theoretically, we could start at any point, but that's the purpose of waiting until February. We want to start back to gather data and to be ready to transition to have that information back to the state.
The second question that I've been asked,
Yes, sir.
if a student chooses to stay virtual, he can still play sports.
Yes, sir, that is accurate.
And I told him I thought that was true.
Yes, sir.
All right,
And,
on this last,
yes, sir.
the pre-K, 12,
Yes, sir.
did you say that was going to be hybrid or full-time?
That would be full-time, 4 days a week. Yes, sir. The last would be 4 days a week. So, the first plan would have everyone back, 4 days a week on March the 1st. The second one would have everyone back pre-K through 12 on March the 8th. And again, that additional, delay would give more time for the vaccine perspective. And I want to reiterate too what Mr. Williams said. When we ran our data for grades and SOL data, while we did see regression, we were pleased with the results. Our students have worked hard, our staff have worked diligently. They have pivoted from, and I know, Mr. Fry, you have a spouse that teaches, so I know you're well aware, as do I, and being able to go from virtual to in-person virtual, and it's a challenging task every day. So I do want to applaud staff for their flexibility, their tireless hours, and the work effort. And let me say this. I also want to commend the Smyth County Sheriff's Department on their willingness and efforts to be with our building level administrators to make home visits. I don't know the total number of home visits, but it is consistently every day, and all of our schools making home visits to check on kids from an academic standpoint and a well-being standpoint. And we just couldn't have done what we've done without Sheriff's Department. So, and Saltville Town Police as well. So thank you to both of those agencies. But again, a lot of work's been done. Our program, our virtual program, I think is strong. I think it stands above many divisions in what we're able to offer. But we also know that we have kids struggling. We know that we have students that have internet access concerns. We have students that are living in very difficult home situations. And there's certainly merit to getting youngsters back in school.
I have a question
Yes.
about the plans. So with these plans, fast forward to March 1st or March 8th for a date to be determined. So even with that number of kids in the buildings, we'll still be able to follow the mitigation strategies that we've had in place to this point? Or
Mr. Williams, yeah, that obviously will be our goal, and we'll work to do that. We have time to work through those issues. What we found in some divisions is there's been some removing of furniture, some unneeded furniture, and just utilization of desks. There's been some movement to libraries for larger classes and things of that nature. So we'll work through that. Dr. Williams and Mr. Sturgill have worked with building principals to identify through the hybrid piece. We know we're solid in hybrid. We also know that we can navigate the pre-K through 3. We do have some issues in some areas, but we have some solutions for those areas too. So as we navigate and move forward, keep in mind, the dependent piece of that is going to be on the number of students that elect to come back. Yeah. And, CDC recommendations and VDH, the goal is to be 6 feet, and that's the gold standard and what we have strived to do from the onset, and we'll continue to do so. But I'll provide an update for you at the February meeting. And again, we presented a plan to you, and it can easily adjust or flex to the pleasure of the board.
So I think, and Dr. Carter, you can comment on this after my comments. So I think what we learned the first round of hybrid instruction is that our buildings are relatively safe.
Yes.
And you commented on that earlier. The other piece is that we've made it through most of our winter sports season with few issues. Is that correct?
That is accurate. Yes. We had an issue with a varsity JV team that we had a quarantine there, and then we had a girls team, 2 girls teams that had a quarantine as well.
But no
No
significant outbreaks.
No,
or spread.
there was no spread between
Yeah,
those
coaches,
No, sir.
anything, okay.
It was an isolated incident with a particular student and quarantined out of caution. But no spread.
What's the board's pleasure?
I'm not totally okay with either one, but I'm not gonna say no, but, I just have no reservations about some of it, especially today. I think a lot of people want to be a little more aggressive about it times too, a little quicker than this 3-week or 4-week transition. But
And our goal here too, Mr. Buchanan, would be if we can get the youngsters back, that gives us March, April, and May, 3 months of instruction to work diligently to try to get some youngsters.
I'd say,
And plus, in some of these buildings, it'd be hard to find a space for the students to be taught in and everything. I mean, that's another big thing. I know like Sugar Grove, Ridge Valley, probably softball, they wouldn't have any problem because they're smaller schools. And they can scatter them out through the schools, might want to put them in another classroom, whatever. The high schools, I kind of, of course, I'm not going back with the high school to later on, but, this, either one of the options would be good for me, I'd like to go back quicker too, because we give them time to, learn how to do the social distancing.
Mr. Chairman, may I point out one additional piece of data? This, and again, we have not polled our parents to determine the number of youngsters that would come back to us, but this is our, let me see if I can enlarge this. This would be our percentages as of November. And I will just read through these so you can see those. Rich Valley Elementary School, 23% of the student population elected virtual. Saltville Elementary, 23. Chilhowie Elementary, 35. Oak Point Elementary, 44. Marion Elementary School, 37. Atkins Elementary, 28. Sugar Grove Elementary, 19. Northwood Middle School, 38. Chilhowie Middle School, 45. Marion Middle School, 46. Northwood High School, 67. Chilhowie High School, 52. And Marion Senior, 48. That's the percentage that elected to be virtual. Again, keep in mind, lots of things have happened locally and nationally, statewide as well. But that was back in November, the total population.
So we go back down to the high schools?
Yes, sir.
So that's percent virtual or percent?
No, that's percent virtual.
That's percent virtual
Yes, sir.
on, okay.
Yep, percent virtual. Yes, sir. And as a school division, 42.6% of our student population elected to be virtual in November.
I'm surprised that Northwood High School was that high virtually when we have so many dead spots in there when they don't have internet, so.
What other questions may I answer?
So Dennis, when we go back, get everybody back on the March 8th,
Yes, sir.
you think we'll still be the 6-foot rule and the mask and everything?
You know, Mr. Buchanan, that's a great question. New information comes out, there's additional flexibilities that come. We've tethered ourselves to the VDH and their recommendations. And I think that's fared very well for Smyth County schools in following the mitigation strategies as outlined from the Virginia Department of Health. I don't know how to answer that question. It seems like March the 8th is an eternity from right now, it seems. I would like to share this that I neglected to say. I spoke with Dr. Shelton on Friday, and I told her some possibilities that I was considering. And she was pleased with this moving forward, with either of the plans. And, you know, her comment to me was, I couldn't ask you to do any more. You've got an additional layer for your faculties to have that additional coverage even from the first shot. You're waiting 2 weeks after the first shot to bring the youngsters back. So, you know, again, her comment was, I could not ask you to do any more. So that was Dr. Shelton's comment.
I think there were several reasons, and you mentioned them a moment ago. There were several reasons, if you could just go through them real quickly again, that you preferred option 2 versus
Absolutely.
option 1.
Absolutely, sure. Yeah, and again, it goes back to the vaccines, and it goes back to the timing of the vaccines. If we look at the 15th as a return date, that puts us at a quick turnaround the Monday after being closed for 2 days. I do think there's merit in waiting till later. But again, it all tethers back to the administration of the second vaccine for our staff.
Now, we still be closed on Wednesdays, however.
Yes, sir. Closed on Wednesdays and
So it's the week of February 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, we don't go to school twice.
Monday, Tuesday. Yes, sir. That's accurate.
I assume that the way it's done is the younger children are less likely to contact. And then the middle school, 7, and then the high school, then the older, those groups come down.
Yes, sir. And from an educational standpoint as well, we know that it's more difficult for our younger learners to learn in the virtual world than it is our middle school and our high school youngsters. So, you know, again, early on, from the Virginia Department of Education guidance, early on, the recommendation was to bring back pre-K through as soon as possible.
We currently have, right now, in virtual, we allow some of the special needs, you know, whatever they were, are going in person right now, correct?
Yes, sir, that is accurate. And while you're speaking, Mr. Williams, yes, sir, I do have an additional question. Once the board approves a plan, that I would like to ask for some flexibility with another population.
Okay. And have there been any issues with that group that's been in that?
Yes, sir.
I must say, I was very pleased to see the number of students that had made A's, B's, C's, and D's. very sad about the ones below that. But, you know, one of the main worries were our children being able to adjust to virtual learning and to be successful at it. And it would seem that they have become, you know, rather proficient at it.
I guess I'm having trouble grasping some of this. If we go back, everybody goes back, hey, 4 days a week, and we're still restricted to the 6 foot, and the mask all day.
Mhm.
What difference does it make waiting on the 8th to go back?
Again, everything goes back to logistics, and it's being able to, keep in mind, one of our biggest issues, we cover 452 square miles in Smyth County. And one of our biggest issues that we face is transporting students. And if we go from day one throwing all of our youngsters on the bus from day one, likelihood is we're not gonna be able to navigate that. So that allows us the flexibility to adjust bus routes on a weekly basis. So Mr. Buchanan, I can easily see us working really well on week 1 and having to reroute buses for week 2 and having to reroute buses for week 3. So you know, again, we'll work to the pleasure of the board, but if we do anything more aggressively, I think that we would encounter concerns with transportation. I don't think that at the high school we're gonna see issues inside the building. I think it's gonna be transportation concerns that we have. So that's my rationale and that's mine alone, but,
So you're looking at the possibility of maybe having a double route, you know, or.
potentially,
splitting
or
routes,
adjusting,
adjusting
yes,
routes
sir.
or whatever.
Yes, sir, and Dr. Rhodes, you remember if you have if you have a day where a bus driver is not there and you have to reroute a lot of buses to cover that route, I can see us having to adjust for that. So it's strictly a matter of, we want to do this right when we come back. We don't want bumps. We want this to be right when we come back. And again, if you're looking at our population of youngsters that do better with virtual instruction, typically we're seeing, but there's a caveat to this too, Mr. Buchanan, that may address a concern for you. I'm going to request some additional flexibility, if the board makes a decision to go back tonight, for special education students to continue as we've been doing. Also, if a school principal and teacher identify a student at risk and needs to get that youngster in more than 2 days a week, I would like to offer that flexibility beginning February the 8th, regardless of level. So if we have a high school kid or an elementary or middle school kid that may not have internet access, that may be struggling terribly academically, that we go ahead and bring them in more often in the beginning of February 8th. If parents, administrators, and teachers are agreeable to that. So I think that will negate some of Mr. Buchanan's concern with some of the families. Also, there's one additional component is if we experience a career and technical education program that needs seat time, like we've approached you with the nursing program, I'm asking that you give me flexibility to bring those youngsters back if we need the seat time to make that work for credentialing. We have youngsters that will be graduating this year that need that. That's a lifelong commitment and potential job opportunity for them. And we want to make sure that they don't miss that too. So again, whatever decision you go with tonight, I would like to ask for that additional flexibility with obviously school level support and parent support. And I'll be glad to clarify that or try explaining that again if it wasn't clear.
Will the principals and teachers get maybe some guidance
They will.
on
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
allowing some of those
Yes, sir.
at risk?
Yes, sir. And again, it may be one additional day a week, it may be 4 days a week. It could be, you alternate some additional kids in the extra 2 days. And again, we'll allow flexibility of the schools to make that work. Our teachers, as far as parental involvement goes, parental involvement is through the roof right now. Tons of parents involved in their child's education because it's in the home. I mean, they're seeing it happen. And I just, I watch some of my wife's lessons, and it's amazing the parental involvement that we have with our youngsters right now. So continuing with that, our teachers know our kids. I would argue our teachers know our kids better now than they've ever known our kids. And that connection is there. You may not think virtually the connection is there, but the connection is there. And they'll know the youngsters that have to be in the position. Does that answer your question? Are there any other questions on the answer?
Does anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion. You know, I think, and Dr. Carter mentioned it a couple of times, I think one of the things we've learned is that our buildings are safe places for our kids and for the staff. And I think a lot of the reason, the big reason that the buildings are safe is because of the work that's been put into making the buildings safe. I think we learned that through the first hybrid round that we went through back in the fall. And I think we've learned that through holding our winter sports seasons. And I know we had a couple of teams quarantined, but for the most part, we've, at least to this point, have done that safely with very few issues. So, you know, I like everyone else, we all recognize that the kids need to be back to school. And, you know, I've wondered aloud many times, you know, how do you teach a kid to read through an iPad? And I think that's a valid concern for anyone. Not that our teachers aren't doing a great job, but I still wonder how that works exactly. So having said that, I'd like to make a motion that we return to in-person learning with option 2 as recommended by Dr. Carter, and follow the dates in the schedule that's listed in option 2.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, show of hands. Thank you.
Consider allowing a teacher at Chilhowie High School to teach an additional section of science during their planning period for additional compensation. And again, we experience this occasionally with our high school, and we're able to pay a teacher an additional block, and it does keep us from having to hire an additional person full-time in that position. So it works quite well for us. We present this to you for consideration for spring semester at Chilhowie High School.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion second, all in favor, show of hands, please. Thank you. All right, now we're going into closed session. Make the motion.
Move to go to closed session for this personnel discussion.
Personnel retirements, resignations, transfers, hires, and other personnel discussion.
All right, we got a second? All in favor, show of hands.